Good evening. Thank you for joining us on the eSpec Books YouTube channel for Haunted by Ghost Stories. I am Jim Chambers, and I will be hosting this episode of Haunted by Ghost Stories tonight. And one of the reasons that I'm hosting this is that I am the co-editor, along with Carol Gyzander, of the new eSpec Books anthology, Even in the Grave, an anthology of ghost stories. And joining me tonight are my co-editor, Carol Gyzander, and several of our contributors who will be introducing themselves to you tonight as we talk about their real-life encounters with the weird, the strange, the unexplained, and the unexplainable. So it's going to be a fun little talk, a little chilling perhaps. Before we jump into the ghostly stuff, I'm going to share another little short video because one of the reasons that we're talking about ghost stories is to help spread the word about eSpec Books' Kickstarter campaign, which is promoting the new anthology as well as some additional books, including Rags by Ty Drago, a new novel, and The Eyes of the Dead by me, the fourth volume in my Corpse Fauna story cycle. If you're interested in checking that out over at Kickstarter, we have just about 37 hours left in the campaign. There are a ton of rewards and cool goodies you can get just for backing at pretty much any level. And just to give you a flavor, we're going to share one short video, and then we're going to get right into the ghostly goings-on. All right, thank you very much. So if you find any of those books intriguing and you haven't yet backed the campaign, please give it a look and consider backing. And if you're watching this down the road in the future and some post Kickstarter apocalyptic existence after the campaign has ended, that's okay. Then just enjoy our ghostly tales, and maybe you can pry a copy of Even in the Grave from the dusty ruins and read those stories and enjoy them. So I'm going to just start off by introducing myself a little bit. As I said, I'm Jim Chambers. I'm the co-editor of Even in the Grave. I'm also the editor of an anthology called Under Twin Suns, which has been nominated for a Bram Stoker Award that was published by Hippocampus Press, and the author of short story collections such as On the Night Border and On the Hierophant Road. I'm going to ask Carol Gyzander to tell us a little bit about herself, and then we're going to jump into our authors. Not literally.
Jump in. Yes. And we have one of our authors has just joined us as well. So, Jim, if you want to bring him in, that'd be great. Yeah.
Welcome, Steven Van Patten.
Cool. Oh. Wait. Oh, almost.
Yeah.
There we go. Oh, look how tiny we got. This is so much fun. Look how many fun people we have. Hi,
man,
everybody.
the legend.
Yes. I'm Carol Gyzander. I'm the co-editor of the Even in the Grave anthology. I myself am a writer and editor of horror, science fiction, and creepy stuff. I have a bunch of short stories that have been published, including one that's now nominated for the Stoker Award for Short Fiction in Under Twin Suns. And I have also edited a number of anthologies for Writer Punk Press. One of them is actually an upcoming goal reward on our Kickstarter. It's called Hideous Progeny, Classic Horror Goes Punk. So I'm hoping that for those who have not backed the Kickstarter yet, you might like to help us out so we can give those away to people.
Thank you, Carol. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn things over to our authors. They're going to each give us a little bit of an introduction about themselves and their writing and their work. And then they're going to tell us about a time that they encountered something possibly from beyond the veil, possibly just a strange occurrence or coincidence. But whatever the cause, hopefully it will definitely be something spooky, something unsettling, or perhaps funny. You never know. Ghosts have a sense of humor. And I think we're going to jump right in, and let's see. We didn't really discuss who was going first, so I'm going to just pick at random, and I think we're going to start with Alp Beck.
What happens when your name starts
this
with
felt
A?
like I feel like I should yell bingo.
You were the only one who looked like you weren't paying attention, Alp. So
I wasn't. I was trying to figure out what I need to do. Anyway, hello everyone. Thank you for letting me join here. And I'm actually going to talk about a time in 1974 where our family lived in a haunted house. And I spoke a little bit of this in the author profile, that if you go on Kickstarter and in some of the other background information, you'll be able to read about it. So I won't talk about the section I talked about in there. But this was 1974, and my family and we moved in. It was me, my father, my stepmother, and my two brothers. And this house, this was when you had those big rotary phones that you turned. I know this is Smithsonian info, but you had this big rotary phone, and we couldn't afford phone service at the time, so this was this phone sitting on a table with no cord. This was before wireless and cordless, and it would ring whenever my stepmother would practice some music on the piano. That was discussed in that bio. But this same house, one day, we used to find a lot of stuff would come out of the cabinets. The kitchen cabinets would be open, and a lot of the cans and stuff from inside would be on the floor almost every morning, and we'd have to shut everything, so we were sure we had a poltergeist. But this one particular time, my stepmother started screaming. I was taking a shower. My stepmother was downstairs in the first floor, and she started yelling and calling me, and I was the only other one in the house. So I put a towel around me, and I ran down, soaking wet, down the stairs. And she was just staring. We had a chandelier, I guess, over the dining area, and the chandelier was just spinning in circles, like wildly, just by itself. There was no breeze. We didn't have holes in the house, with breezes or weird currents or whatever. So we're both staring at it, and it's really going fast, and I'm worried it's going to rip off. And my stepmother says, because we used to meddle with we had Ouija boards and all that, and she goes, I think it's a pendulum. And I said, a what? Mind you, I'm soaking wet, I'm a little chilly, and she said, it's a pendulum. Let's try asking questions of it. I thought, honestly, I come from a strange family, so there's never a doubt that I'm going to go along with whatever. So my stepmother starts asking questions such as, do we know you? And the thing, oddly enough, the chandelier stops spinning and starts slowly revolving into a yes or a no pattern. So it said yes. And my stepmother says, are you related to us? I think everybody's related to somebody. So, and the same thing, yes. And she had a whole conversation, and she narrowed down to a Cuban relative of my father's that was visiting or something. But so this weird thing happened, and then eventually this went on for about 45 minutes. So it wasn't like it slowed down or anything. Then when that eventually did die down, Greg, her name is Gregoria, and Greg said, I think we should have a seance. It's a natural sequence. So she talked her mother into coming over and having a seance. We had to look up how to do this. It's before the internet. And during that time, we had candles. It was dark. We're all sitting there. I'm kind of freaking out a little bit because I'm worried that this might not be fun. I was thinking this is going to be very odd and nothing's going to happen, either one or the other. And my stepmother spoke perfect Greek, and she's American. She was born here. But my father is Cuban. My father wasn't in the house. And Suddenly, she starts speaking perfect Spanish, which I understand. Her mother doesn't, but I understood, and she was speaking perfectly. And I don't remember what she was talking about, but she was also claiming to be somebody's relative. So basically, this house was definitely haunted. This is the same house that my stepmother was in the attic one day, and she felt somebody pick her up and put her down. And then a few weeks after that seance, there was this horrible car crash in front of the house. And this young girl had driven the car into a pole right in front of the house. And when I looked out the window, the girl was laying 10 feet away on the passenger side by the door, and she was dead. And I don't know that that has anything to do with it, but I always related the two facts together. We lived there for about 2 years. You'd find it very strange, but we kind of got used to all the weirdness. But I do believe that we overlap in other areas that we're not always conscious of. So that's my story. And I'm sticking.
Thank you, Al. Wow, I wasn't expecting our first tale to begin with a death. An actual
I'm sorry.
No.
A seance and then a death. It's usually the other way around.
I know, right?
Or end with a death, yeah. So what, Alp, what's the title of your story in Even in the Grave? And just tell us.
Schrodinger's Ghost. I had to go and pick a title I can hardly pronounce. So Schrodinger's Ghost, it's a ghost story based in the idea of physics of Schrodinger's cat. So there's a duality in the story that the idea behind it is it makes you wonder about what's really happening. It's not a clear-cut story. It's very different than what I usually write. I don't know how people are going to take it. I hope it's good. My early readers really liked it. And I didn't know to the last minute what the end was going to be. So I'm pleased with the end. I think it organically went there. I hope people enjoy it. I'm very proud of it.
Yeah, and you should be. And I think you helped by the end of it, the editing process. You, me, and Carol all knew very well how to spell.
Let me tell you, Carol and you are the best friggin' editors. You asked the right questions.
Oh, well, thank you. No, Jim was pointing out that by the end we knew how to spell Schrodinger,
Yeah.
To this day, I have to look it up every time I have to write it down. And there's also what are those called? Umlauts or something?
Yes.
The dots. Well, half the time they're there, half the time they're not. I'm not sure where to put them. Yes.
Okay.
Brilliant.
I copy and paste it. That's how I do it. Yeah. Thank you for sharing the story. That was cool.
Thank you, Al. And I think there's a saying that when it's, you're telling ghost stories around the campfire, it's always best to go for the second story from a man in a hat. And that reduces it to Rob.
I thought it was the man in the hook.
Or Gordon. And I think, Gordon, you have been elected as our next ghost storyteller.
Okay, there we go. Well, in addition to having published my own magazine since 1966, well, other people are doing it now. I also, I'm old grainy. I've been writing that long, but specifically, I do a lot of tour guiding in New York as well, and many of those tours are ghost tours. So I'm going to do just a short piece about somebody actually seeing a ghost on one of my tours, and then I'll tell a personal one. I've been doing a job where we ended the KGB, and I told a story about a woman that lived in the building, was attacked in her bedroom, viciously raped, managed to get away from her killer while he was relaxing, came back with a huge knife and practically cut his head off. And since then, his headless ghost has been hanging out on the staircase, presumably. And after I told the story, we were up in the bar saying my goodbyes, and somebody asked me to repeat the story. And I did. I said, why? Well, when we came in, he was standing by the door. I said, okay, is he still there? No, he moved over by the window now. Well, it was an interesting tour. But my most interesting personal ghost story involves a lot of people that we know about. It was a day after NECON. Convention usually happens in Rhode Island. And a group of about 10 or 12 decided we'll stay overnight, go over to Falls River, Massachusetts, stay at the Lizzie Borden house. The minute we walk in there, one of our group, a guy named Baer just get all nervous and everything. He told us the next day he started seeing things moving around behind all of us while this was going on. Of course, we didn't know that then. We did a little tour of the house. We're chilling later on. Some of us already went to bed because they're not involved in the story for some reason. We didn't need them. And my friend Trish Kasich is sitting on the couch where Andrew Borden was killed. Just before that, a bright light comes through the window, and Bibb gets all nervous until we remind him there's a bus terminal across the street. Didn't entirely settle him down. And then shortly after that, we decided we'll pull out the Ouija board. No, let's not do the Ouija board. We'll do tarot cards. Okay, tarot cards. And basically, we decided, Lizzie was justified. She did the killings, but she was justified. Her father was a real creep, and her mother was no help at all. Having settled that, I then noticed Bev walking around by the fireplace, picks up a poker, and he's wandering back and forth, but he's moving closer and closer to Trish, who's sitting on the couch. So I go over there, and I say, Bev, you've been acting like antsy all evening, and now you're going to be swinging this thing around. You're just asking for ghosts to show up, aren't you? And I take the poker away from him, and I put it back in the fireplace. And they told me the next morning that before I put it back, I was wiping it clean, as if I were wiping off some blood.
Oh my!
Oh.
And after that, my part in the drama was done. Although a few more things happened afterwards. I went up to bed. I was the first one in the room. About 5 or 6 of us in a room, including I think Trish was in our room as well. And I'm laying there in bed. And I'm feeling these little things moving around on the bed. Remember, Lizzie Borden did own cats. And having had cats myself, I know what it feels like when the cat's walking around, pulling on the blanket. And for some reason, none of this bothered me, which was the most interesting thing of all. None of this stuff actually chilled me at all. I said, oh, yeah, there's ghost cats here. That's nice. I'm tired. And then, eventually everybody comes up. We all go to sleep. Sometime around 7 o'clock in the morning, big rap on the door. Trish sits up, says, okay, Lizzie, we're up. Thank you. Some of the group kept going back there year after year, even though they were terrified. One of them was the late Lisa Minetti. So I wanted to have a little toast to her.
Thank you, Gordon. Yeah, we all miss Lisa.
Yeah.
But I have heard tales of the Lizzie Borden house, but that is just, I mean, you may not have been chilled, but the fact that you were wiping down the poker.
I usually do this in more detail. It takes about 10 minutes, but we don't want to have time for that. Yeah. People can call me later.
We'll do that around a campfire for real sometime. Yeah.
Nice and creepy.
Okay.
I just want to suggest a ghost cats implies there's no litter box to clean. So maybe that's not a bad thing. So.
Oh, Carol.
You got the smell, though. You still have the smell.
Gordon, tell us the story, the title of your story, and Even in the Grave, and just give us a really quick description.
My story is set in medieval Japan. It's called Mushigawa's Homecoming, and it's basically about these two samurai who show up at this obscure inn in the corner, and they start messing with the owner of the inn, not realizing just what they're in for. Any more than that, I'll give it away.
Nice.
Thank you.
I can't wait to read these stories.
So I think I'm just going to randomly select one of our intrepid authors, Mark. How about you? Would you like to go next?
Oh, yeah. So this one, I may never see Steven in my house again after this one. It's 1983, and the house I'm in now belonged to my grandparents. It's about a year after my grandfather had died, and whenever I stayed over with my grandmother, we slept in the same bed. And we had, because the way the house is designed, it's almost like a railroad where you have the large room in the back, then you have the sitting room, and my grandparents' room was in the front of the house. So I was sleeping, my grandmother was on the opposite side of me where my grandfather used to sleep, and I was on her side. And we had turned out the lights, and I had turned over to go to sleep, and I shifted to look toward the far end of the house. And I saw this figure walking toward me. He's like, I could tell it was a man. And he's slowly coming through from the back room, and he's taking his time walking. And it's one of those moments as a kid, I kind of sat up because I wasn't sure whether I was actually seeing someone or my eyes were playing funny, but it was clearly a person kind of shadowed walking through the bedroom, through the sitting room. And I went under the covers and I pulled the cover over my head, and there's no footsteps. You don't hear anything. But a few seconds later, I felt a hand hit me on the shoulder, do this, and then leave. And when I pulled the cover back, the person was walking back out of the room and disappeared into the back bedroom, just completely faded out. I'm convinced it was my grandfather, and I'm convinced he's still here because years later, when I owned a cat, my cat Hobbs, one night we were sitting in the living room. He's sitting in the archway. I'm on the couch, and he jumped up and he starts meowing like crazy at the door. And I looked at him. I said, "What's wrong?" And he's meowing, but he's looking, watching something move across the room that I can't see. And I said, "What, do you see something?" Like like we most cat owners do. I'm talking. I was like, "Do you see something?" And I felt something warm pass through me. And he's still watching in that same direction as it passed through me and went back out. And I went, "Oh, okay." So that's my ghost story.
Wow.
That's a great story.
That's really good.
So now what? How did you feel in the moment? Were you frightened, or were you reassured?
No,
Just
it was one of those things where I've always heard about particularly cats being able to see between both planes. So I just chalked it up to that. If it was something that was going to harm me, I figured he was going to cross the room and jump into my lap, just as a form of defense. But he didn't. He just kept watching. So when I felt it didn't feel cold. So because it didn't feel cold, I didn't feel like, oh, there's a problem. I just kind of chalked it up to, either it was granddad checking on me or spirit just passing through and on his way to someplace else. So.
Wow.
Cool.
And that pat on the shoulder, was that like a friendly pat or was that an accosting pat? How did you feel at that moment?
No, it's a friendly.
Steven's saying,
it
whack.
was no, it was very much like, "Hey there," kind of like patting me on the shoulder.
Yeah.
And
good.
so I've always wondered if he knew I was there, or if it was he was going to lay down, and because I was there, he just decided not to, but just wanted to let me know that he was in the house, and then went on about his way.
Cool. So, Steven, how about it? Are you never going back to Mark's house?
Oh, please. I ain't scared of his house.
He ain't scared of no ghosts.
And Mark, tell us the title of your story and give us a quick description.
Okay, the title of the story is called "The Bells," and it concerns a husband and wife who have returned to the husband's former home, this mansion, to settle his deceased father's paperwork. And they find out that his father wasn't actually living the honest life they all thought he was. And he is not the person he thought he was. And I'll leave it at that.
Cool. Thank you.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's very intense. Yeah.
All right. And our next author up I'm very eager to hear about this particular author's experiences, because this is an author who does not live entirely, or so he claims, he does not live entirely on this earthly plane. And occasionally troubled by dimensional portals and eldritch energies that run astray.
Oh, this
So
has to be Oliver.
yes, we're going to hear next from Oliver Baer. Oliver, just tell us a bit about yourself, and let's hear your ghostly tale.
Well, as Jim said, yeah, I live between several worlds, I guess. But I'm an editor, writer, and yeah, I do many things as it is. So my tale is actually set in a similar setting to my story, and even in the grave, which is I used to have a social work job, and the agency I worked for created housing for people who were homeless, people with psychiatric disabilities, and people living with AIDS. And I happened to be, and some of us, like me, worked in the same building where people lived. So, and I worked in the largest one. And one of our people basically would submit reports to my boss every day. Well, first, he would submit them to his case manager, and then, since it became an everyday thing, the case manager submitted it to my boss, and then finally, the guy was getting upset that nothing was being done about his reports, so he went directly to my boss. And these reports were of noises in the building, and it basically recreated housing in an old hospital. It was the first immigrant hospital in New York City, and a tubercular hospital. So he kept sending reports of strange noises, as he put it. And a couple of times they were explainable because somebody was living in the apartment above him, but many times there was nobody living above him. And at first my boss shoved it off as just pipes. But finally he couldn't do that anymore, so he sent me, instead of doing my work, my job was then to stay in the room above where this guy lived to see what was going on. So I arrived, and I found this out, like, I arrive in the morning, and my boss said, "Guess what you're doing today?" I said, "Well, I have all this list of things that you usually have me do." He said, "No, you're going to stay up in this apartment." I said, "Okay." "All day?" He said, "Yeah, all day." And so basically I spent the day in this empty apartment, and there at times there were some noises, more like where the pipes would be. I tried talking to it, and as I was talking to it, the noises, like they seemed to change their rhythm as I was talking to it. And then, but I wasn't really clear that they were really answering me, other than sort of changing their rhythm. And I guess I wasn't as specific in my questioning. Sometimes I was really just talking to it about telling my day. And then at one point, the windows were closed. At one point, the shade on the window kind of flapped. And I thought, oh, well, does that mean you're leaving? And there was no answer after that, other than, and then the activity kind of died down. And then as I was leaving, because it was now about 5 o'clock, and I did have other things to do before I left. As I was, leaving the door, opening the door, and then walking out, there was a rapping, almost um, as I left, and I said goodbye. Hope you're not going to bother the guy downstairs anymore. And I went downstairs and did the rest of my job. My boss said, "So what happened?" I said, "Well, really nothing happened. I did hear a lot of noises that came from the pipe area, and the shade flapped, but I didn't really see anything." And he said, "Well, I guess we'll just have somebody look at the pipes. I'll get a plumber or somebody to look at the pipes then." And that was about it for me. I mean, to be honest, the guy never stopped turning in reports. So, but crazy people. It wasn't. We did clarify that he had heard things. So that. But before he hadn't heard them as, I guess, often, all the time, as his reports suggested he did. Mm-hmm. So that's basically the story. Mm. There's some more to that, but that's basically it.
So are you suggesting that after your visit, the spirit was more active? Or whatever. Let's not call it a spirit. The disturbances were more active.
Yeah. Well, that you see, I am not going to claim to that. Now, other of the residents, claim that. As a matter of fact, when they found out that I was sent to do this, some of them weren't too pleased. Because they then claimed that there was other activity going on in the building after I visited. They already claimed that there was that weird stuff happened around me. So But this was the same agency that moved its office to 666 Broadway.
And, working there.
So the floor that the agency moved its main office into, there's an architectural phenomena apparently called bad air or evil air, where people claim that when they're in buildings with this phenomena that they get sick, or they pass out, they get lightheaded. So there was no seance or anything to clean out, but they did hire some kind of environmental company to come in and supposedly clean out the bad air, evil air before the whole office moved in. And they also put in what's called in the mental health field, they have something called a psychosocial club, which is sort of like a day center, or where people can go during the day and do things sometimes. And so people who went to that center, even after things were cleaned up, claim that weird things went on.
You know what I think is interesting? We have two stories in the anthology that take place in apartments in New York where there may be some sort of haunting thing, one of which is Amy's. Shh, I'm not saying anything. But Oliver's, yours isn't. Can you tell us what your story is, the title? And
so mine is, well, I'm not going to, I'm going to, dance around. Well, I'm going to move around what it is. But the basic idea is It's called Insubstantial. The basic idea is there's a psychiatrist that's been tasked with creating a conduit to Earth using one of his patients, and he fails to do this. So basically, I'm gonna say enforcers are sent to basically give him the message, basically tell him that this isn't gonna fly.
Yeah. And then
Step up the game.
Oh, that was a deep. Is that me making that deep voice sound?
Wow, Jim.
Wow.
Been possessed.
Whoa.
I think I breathed in evil air.
Yeah, it's the evil air. It's the evil air.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you, Oliver. That was pretty cool. And I think we're going to go next because he's not paying attention. Rob Ottone. Look
he's
away,
calling on
and
the
I
teacher
call your
with that.
name.
Wait a minute. Yeah.
That's my move. That's literally my move. So yeah, hi. I'm Robert Ottone. I'm the author of that collection right there, Her Infernal Name and Other Nightmares, on sale now on Amazon, 99 cents an ebook. Hey. Anywho, my story, I crowdsourced on Twitter and Instagram, and I almost had a ghost cat story, but not enough of you cat people voted, and thus it was voted down. So I will tell you the story of the time when I was in college 17 years ago, when I broke into the Kings Park Mental Hospital here on Long Island. So Building 93 is one of the Kings Park Mental Hospital buildings that is still standing here on the island. They don't quite know what to do with it. It seems like it would make sense to turn it into apartments, yet that also seems like a horror movie waiting to happen, which would be hilarious. But nevertheless, the Kings Park Mental Hospital exists, and you can still go to it. So a friend of mine from college and I got together. We used to do these stupid, really stupid things where we would go to various mental hospitals or supposedly haunted areas and break into them. I don't condone this for the children watching, all 14 of you, but I would not recommend doing this. So we were hiding in the bushes. There's a bar right near there down the hill, which has the best wings on Long Island. But we were there, we went up the hill, we were waiting in the bushes, and in the bushes we could hear movement. Now, the area is rife with raccoons. So we were in these bushes surrounded by hundreds of raccoons when one of the security guards came over, got out of his car, shined a light exactly where we were, and started feeding the raccoons. So they swarmed even more. It was disgusting. So we make our way across an empty field after the security guard leaves and finishes feeding his friends. And we go to what is essentially a sort of like a delivery area. Like if you imagine where they deliver supplies, like a truck, like a loading dock almost, but it's a little smaller because it's connected to a facility for mental health. And we went through the gate. The gate had already been cut because it's kind of a Long Island rite of passage that one would, in fact, break into a mental hospital. But we went through. We had bolt cutters with us even. We had masks. This was before everybody had to wear a mask. But we had masks at the time because we were worried about asbestos and stuff like that. So we got in, and there was plywood covering the doors. So I was even bigger back then. I just ripped it all off. It kind of came apart. It was kind of like, well, they want to keep somebody out. Like plywood's probably not the way to go. But we took it down and we snuck in. And once we were in the loading dock area or in the loading facility or whatever, it was really strange. There was beds. There was filing cabinets filled with all kinds of things. I stole the American Journal of Medicine from 1982. My thinking was that's the year The Thing came out. John Carpenter's The Thing, so I'm stealing. So I did that, and we had flashlights. Like I said, we had masks, we had flashlights. This is before cell phones were really like a huge thing. It's like not all of our cell phones. So we had actual flashlights. So we were making our way down the corridor. And this was in August. I failed to mention that. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Long Island in August. Not a particularly windy time. But we kept hearing sort of like shuffling, rustling, standard stuff, I guess, in a spooky mental hospital that's abandoned. And we were going up the stairs. And as we got up the second flight of stairs, so the way it's set up is it's multiple floors, but we got up the first flight of stairs and checked out the first floor. I guess it was the second floor, technically, with no problem. We go up to the second floor, and as we were turning a corner, a door slammed. And we both kind of froze, and we're like, that's not good. So we continued looking. We opened up the door. There was nothing there. But the window was like ajar. And I was like, the wind. My friend was getting upset. I was like, it's fine. Don't be a coward. So we kept going up the stairs. His flashlight died. And I was like, that's, I told you to change the batteries, dopey. Then as we were going up further and further, again, we were hearing certain things. We were hearing shuffling. We were hearing movement. And again, we were closing in towards the roof. And now going onto the roof of the building is like, again, it's a rite of passage. People like to go up there and throw things off. I don't know. So we were going up, and I was significantly ahead of my friend, which I didn't mean to. I guess I was moving quick because I was anxious. And my flashlight, as I was ascending the stairs, began to dim. And my thinking was, this is trouble. If this goes out, we're in bad shape. So we got to the floor. Right before you go up a little more, you open the door, and there's the roof. We could see that door right there. And at that point, my light had almost completely gone out. So my friend caught up to me, and he was like, let's not do this. And I was like, your flashlight's not working? He's like, no, it's dead. I changed the battery, but it's dead. And I was like, okay, dude. So what ended up happening, we started going back down the stairs because we were going to leave. I also didn't want to get locked on the roof. God forbid the door caught or something. I don't know. So we were leaving. And as we were going back down the stairs, my light started getting brighter, my flashlight. We kept hearing like wind howling almost. And that's what I was thinking it was. And as we got to the bottom landing, overlooking the loading dock area, his flashlight turned back on. And so we went out through the door. He stole some fluff from a bed. I don't know why he took stuffing from a bed. I thought that was weird. But I had my American Journal of Medicine from 1982, and we left. And I had found out that 2 days earlier, a pair of people had committed suicide. Jumped off the roof of the building. And that's my story about the Kings Park Mental Hospital on Long Island. I don't know, 100% if it was a ghost making these noises or shuffling around or whatever the case may be. But it definitely was a spooky night. It was a warm night, and there was no wind. So whatever was closing the door, whatever was shuffling things around in there, there was no wind that night.
Wow.
Yikes.
So that's quite a coincidental timing, your expedition into the building right after some deaths occurred there. I thought you were going to come down and say that you discovered that the Journal of American Medicine had stopped publishing in 1980.
Yeah. Okay, that's going in a story now. Thanks, Jim. Yeah. Good idea.
So Rob, tell us the title of your story and a brief description, because your story, and even in the grave, is another classic Long Island haunting location.
Yeah. So my story is called After Trevor Vanished, and it's sort of a play on the Lake Ronkonkoma haunted lake folklore piece here on the island. I'm kind of obsessed with folklore from all over the place, not just New York and Long Island, but I always try to find a little bit, a way to kind of work that into everything that I do. So when the opportunity to put this story together came up, I was like, I haven't read anything about the Lady in the Lake in a while. So I put this together. I went down to the lake a couple times. I took pictures there the other day, actually. So the Lake Ronkonkoma, there's the rumor is that there is a spirit of a First Nations princess that claims the life of one young man every year. And it does happen. A person does drown in the lake every year, and they often don't find the body. There are many underwater tributaries and whatnot, but nevertheless, it is a thing that is fun to play with. It is ripe territory for a spooky story. So
I have to say, I'm very glad you came back from the lake, Rob. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Girl.
All right. Amy, how would you like to go next and share your ghostly tale?
Absolutely. Thanks, Jim. So my ghost story takes place in when I lived in Park Slope in Brooklyn. My father unfortunately passed away from pulmonary fibrosis in 2011. And I went to visit him in the hospital here on Long Island in Huntington. But because I'm a freelancer, I could only stay for a couple of days because clients can only be so sympathetic. And so back at my apartment, I was getting ready for bed one night, and I had cut off all the lights in the living room. And I saw a sphere floating by the window. And behind me, that's not a sphere, that's a recessed light in the ceiling where I'm currently staying, in case you're wondering. Excuse me. So I took the spear in the living room of my apartment to be my father saying a final goodbye, even though I had seen him in the hospital before he actually passed away. And then about 2 days later after that, he passed away. And of course, I came back to Long Island for the wake and the funeral. But, as they say, love always finds a way.
Aw.
So not
Glad
not
he was
all.
able to be in touch. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not all ghost stories are horror stories.
Exactly.
And Amy, tell us about your story in Even in the Grave, the title and a quick description.
Yes, my story is entitled Bruised and Battered Nevermore. And it's set in my first apartment in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. I basically, not to give too much away, but the apartment contains the secrets of the dead, and there's actually a seance in my story as well. And you'll have to read the book to find out all the gory details.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can't wait.
We're getting down to our final authors, and I think we're going to ask John P. Collins to talk next and give us his tale.
Hi, I'm John Collins. Nice to meet all of you.
Hi, John.
Hi. I have several short stories published, but this anthology is a big deal for me. Always been a storyteller, but only started being a writer about 5 years ago. Anyway, I'm not going to tell you a ghost story. I'm going to tell you a strange occurrence because this is a weird one. And we've heard so many ghost stories tonight. Back in 1999, I was taking a trip down to Maryland. I have family in Salisbury, Maryland, on the Eastern Shore. And the best direct route is to take the Jersey Turnpike down to Delaware and so on and so forth. It was the first time in my life I had a really good functional car, so I wanted to make the trip. And because I was leaving Long Island, as all Long Islanders know, traffic leaving the island at any time is a horror show. So leave as early as possible. So I left pre-dawn, like 4:30, 4:45 in the morning. I had a nice, beautiful Camaro with T-tops. I had the tops off. I'm cruising along. And as you're going down the Jersey Turnpike gets significantly smaller. It goes from 4 lanes in a service road down to just 4 lanes and no service road, till eventually it's down to 2 lanes. And I'm cruising along, enjoying myself, just enjoying the hum of the tires on the pavement. And when I got down to this part of the turnpike that has 2 lanes, traffic starts to get a little tighter, a lot more trucks go around and whatnot. And I'm cruising along pretty well in the right lane. And I get to a truck. Okay, I go around the truck, no problem. And in the distance, it's a clear run, except for it says headlights just maybe about a mile away. I'm young, I'm dumb. I drive like a moron at that point in time. So I'm curious. I get down to, and as I'm getting closer, I see a Lincoln Town Car. And the only reason I know it's a town car is because my father had one for a little while. So I recognize the car. As I'm cruising along, I'm coming up along, and the first thing I notice is the cleanest cherry red car I've ever seen in my life. And I'm just, the sun's coming up in the east, so I have the makings of light in my rear view. As I get up next to the car, there's 4 men in the car, and they're all dressed like clowns. The red nose on the driver. The driver had yellow hair. The passenger seat, front seat passenger had blue hair, and the 2 guys in the back had red hair, red, white, and blue, like camouflage, red, white, and blue. And I look over at them, and I'm stunned. I look, and at the same moment, as if they're all, they turn and look at me. And the hairs of my arm go up. I had hair then, so that went up a little bit. I go around them completely freaked out. I pull into a rest stop, which is about a mile away, because my hands were shaking. I couldn't. I'm like, that didn't happen. It's just bad luck seeing something like that. I go inside, use the restroom, throw some water on my face. I come outside. Someone put deflated balloons on the hood of my car.
Wow.
Yeah. The rest of the trip, I'll be honest, I don't remember much of it. I visited my grandfather and my uncle and my uncle's family. I can't remember any of it except for that moment.
Oh man.
That sucked.
Wow.
Hairs are going up just thinking about it, and I haven't talked about that in a long time.
What or whoever those clowns were, they noticed you, John.
Oh God,
John, you made my evening.
Send in the clowns.
Wow.
You get
Clown car. It doesn't get better than that.
That's it.
But that's
wait, what time of day was it when you crossed paths with the clowns? It was really early still.
The sun was still coming up in my rear. So when I first, I'm looking, I'm like, nah, yeah. And I said I drove like a moron, but I was a controlled moron. I probably goosed the engine from about 70 miles an hour to 90 just to get away from them.
That's it.
I just no.
Clowns Before Dawn.
Oh, there's the title.
So, John, tell us the title of your story, and Even in the Grave, and give us a quick description.
My story is called Old Spirits and Fine Tobacco. It's about 3 men enjoying a night of cigars and scotch, and things start happening. I'm usually a lot more graphic, but I try to do something different. I'm very proud of this story. I hope everyone enjoys it.
I certainly did.
Can't wait to read it.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it a lot. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Carol
John.
got everybody's story.
I know. I got to read them all before anybody else did. Jim and I did. Yeah. I just want to do a quick throw out as well. Teel James Glenn couldn't join us tonight, but he has a story about a hitchhiking clown in an anthology called Hell's Highways. So if you're really keen on this, you might want to check that out, folks. It's creepy and yes.
John, you might want to avoid it. Old.
I'm picturing like lead-weighted big red shoes to clock people with.
Yeah.
Wow. There you go, John.
Wow. Yeah.
Technically, I also have a clown with balloons in a car in my story.
Really?
Oh,
true.
thank God! I
Yes.
thought you were going to
True.
say in that
That's
house.
right.
Whoa,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's right.
John, be warned when you read
It's
into
an
Stanford.
epidemic.
I was going to sneak that
Epidemic
up
of
on him.
clowns.
That's great. Yeah, John, I'm surprised you told that story with so many clowns standing behind you.
I know.
Oh my God!
Nice
Can you
knowing
imagine?
John.
All
It was
right.
nice
No,
knowing
I
you.
Just
can't imagine.
left.
And our next author up, and I think this is our last for the evening, but Steven Van Patten. I waited till
Last
the
is
end to
Steven's
Steven because
best.
I have seen Steven wearing the Eye of Agamotto. And so I know that Steven has had encounters with the mystic in his secret identity as Earth's Sorcerer Supreme. So Steven, we're here to hear your ghost story.
All right. Well, you know what? So real quick, hi, Steven Van Patten. Normally my wheelhouse is vampires, werewolves, and serial killers, but as I'm sure no one on this panel is surprised to hear, I have had a occasional run-in with a bump in the night. Instead of telling one thing, I'm just gonna hit you guys with 3 quick bullets out of maybe like 10 things that have happened to me. The first one, real quick. So I am being taken care of by my grandparents who live when they were with us, they were in a town called Goodwater, Alabama. These are my mother's parents. They were moonshiners during Jim Crow, so not a lot phased them. However, I managed to phase them when at a friend's funeral, they were trying to explain to me, like why their friend was in the coffin and I met the man and whatever. And then later on that very evening, I claimed to see him. Oh no, he's actually right over here on the porch. And that bothered them so much that they decided, because I was probably 4 when this happened, and they decided to tell me about that later on when I was a teenager. By the way, remember that time you basically scared the hell out of everybody in the house? Like, what are you talking about? So, we had that lovely exchange. And like I said, these folks weren't easily scared of anything, but I managed to do that. The second quick one. So I ended up, for whatever reason, we were kind of short on people for me to stay with. I think I was 12. And so I ended up at Aunt May's house. Aunt May was not known for her mental stability. Aunt May actually chased her husband out on a ledge with a butcher knife once. Aunt May was not wrapped too tight. But I ended up having to spend the night at Aunt May's house for whatever reason. And I mean, obviously she didn't hurt me or anything. But while I was laying there, and you cat owners will love this, while I was laying in this very dark, quiet bedroom, a cat appeared, was standing on my chest and, kind of kept me company for a little bit. So in the morning, over scrambled eggs and cream of wheat, I was like, so what's the name of the cat? And she said, I don't have a cat. The third and final thing that I'm going to lay on you tonight is I'm 16-ish. I'm home alone. I'm in my bedroom. And this was before I had discovered the miracles of marijuana or tequila. So I can honestly say I was of complete sound mind and I was 100% sober and wide awake. And as I'm laying there, I see some sort of shuffling behind a garbage can I used to have in my room. And then that turned into some sort of shadowy creature that then kind of walked around the garbage can and was just kind of standing there. And I mean, I'm from Brooklyn. I have no intentions of, as we would say, going out like that. So I swung at the thing. My hand went through it. It disappeared. And then I proceeded to stay up for the rest of the night and question life. So those are the 3 ghost highlights of my life. I hope you enjoyed them. Thank you.
Thank you, Steven. See, that's what I was talking about. Most people have a ghost story or 2. You have highlights. from the annals of your ghost encounters.
Exactly.
I think you walk between the worlds, one foot in each world.
Yeah, something like that. I think the tequila is actually what's kind of like stabilizing me. So yeah, that's what happened.
Very creepy. Yeah, that first one in particular, that kind of thing is just really an eerie.
Yeah, because the thing is, I didn't remember it.
Like, what's that?
I didn't remember it.
Yeah, but I mean,
they had to recant it for me. I was like, oh, I did that?
Because kids don't make that kind of stuff up when you're that young. It's not really, you're not thinking, let me pretend I saw a ghost. You're just telling the truth. True. And it's like, oh my, okay. So tell us the title of your story, and Even in the Grave, and just a little bit about it.
My story is The Blind Spot, and oddly enough, it's about a guy who as a child had a sort of a tense relationship with his stepfather. Grows up to be this sort of I guess kind of emotionally wounded person, and then things really go left. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Cool. Well, thank you all for sharing these really entertaining and spooky ghost stories. Carol, did you want to say anything about your own personal ghost stories before we wrap up for tonight?
No, I actually have 2 experiences of my own, but I wrote about them in the introduction to the book. So when you guys get it, you'll be able to take a look and see what happened to me. They're both real, both about my 2 grandmothers. So
Yes, excellent. And as we were chatting before we went live tonight, I don't have a ghost story. I don't really have a personal ghost story. I do have a couple of alien encounter stories, but you'll have to wait for someday when we do an anthology of alien encounters.
Next anthology. Oh, okay.
Even in the stars? Cool.
Cool.
But I want to thank everyone. Go ahead, Carol.
We should just say you don't have a ghost encounter yet, Jim. How's that? Yeah.
That's right. Or I didn't recognize the ones I've had.
Okay.
That's it. Actually, I do feel haunted. I often feel haunted by our editor and publisher at eSpec Books. Danielle, if you're watching, just kidding. I think that was my answer in one of the interview questions was what haunts you, and I think that's what I wrote my editors.
Yeah, she's on top of everything. She follows all the details. It's wonderful.
So, well, thank you to everyone in the audience for joining in tonight. And please do, if you haven't already, check out the Kickstarter. The link's in the chat. We're really excited about what we're doing there. We're keeping our fingers crossed that in the 36 or so hours left, we can get to a hardcover edition of Even in the Grave, which would be just really fun. And, if not, that's cool. We hope you'll still check out the book when it's published. It'll be out in the next few months, probably before summer or the beginning of summer. And that's about it. So thank you to all of our authors tonight. Thank you for your wonderful stories in Even in the Grave and for your wonderful stories tonight. And we will be seeing you on the other side.
Excellent. Thanks so much, everybody.